So imagine if you had the opportunity to become a better you. You could augment yourself, maybe become smarter or have a more expanded memory. Maybe you could be stronger, faster, tougher, or maybe just be more attractive. Well, in the world of the Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett, they've had to make that choice. And we'll have to see if they made the right one. So when Lana first suggested this book, she had described it as a Sherlock and Watson mystery caper kind of story. And that sounded really interesting. I kind of like a fantasy Sherlock book. I mentioned one in the last episode. But as I started to read this book, I really was feeling like, well, she kind of buried the lead here. Yeah, the main characters definitely have a Sherlock and Holmes kind of vibe. But this book is biopunk. Now, you might not be familiar with what biopunk is. A lot of people are familiar with cyberpunk, where between the Cyberpunk Edge Runners Netflix show, the Cyberpunk video game, or older movies like Johnny Mnemonic or Blade Runner. All of those are kind of the well-known cyberpunk kind of stories. Biopunk is essentially an offshoot from cyberpunk, where instead of people being augmented with implants, they're instead augmented with genetically engineered implants, or they have some sort of genetic engineering that's occurring to their body that makes them different. An example of this in the real world might be the technology called CRISPR, where it uses a retrovirus injected in you and it actually edits your DNA. Still a very experimental technology, but this is essentially a potential source of biopunk futurism. So I found it to be actually very surprising when this biopunk story started to come out. I didn't see that one coming at all. And in fact, within like 2 chapters, I was like, whoa, this isn't even just biopunk. This is transhumanism. They are significantly altering human beings to be something they're not supposed to be. For example, there are some people, they call them clackers, because they have so much muscle mass added to them, they actually have to add extra bone structure to support that muscle. So we're not talking like Goldberg big. We're talking like the Hulk big, in order to necessitate having that much extra muscle or extra structural support. And when they move, they actually make these clacking sounds because it's the bones just banging into each other. And they have other people who they've had their minds expanded so that they have greater processing power. And then other people have a different augmentation where they have a deeper, almost photographic level memory, which is actually what our main character, Cole, that's his augmentation. He has a greater ability to perceive and remember things. This is all in service to his job. He is an apprentice investigator for Anna. So he's taking on the role of Watson. She's taking on the role of Sherlock. And Anna is definitely very Sherlock inspired. She's pulling up all the tropes, just in slightly nuanced new ways. But like, she's very abrasive and, has some odd hobbies and interests. And so she's definitely Sherlock inspired. In fact, in this story, she actually blindfolds herself and performs even other forms of sensory deprivation in order to enhance her problem-solving mental gymnastics, as it were. So she actually sends Cole out to do all the legwork and expose himself to all the sights and distractions so that she can just receive the raw information and process it as efficiently as possible. So obviously both of these people are augmented, and many of the other people in the story are augmented. They're just augmented in all sorts of different ways. So Cole is an engraver, and his job is to basically go to scenes that require investigation and record everything like a human video camera. But I haven't actually gotten to the best part yet. And by best part, I mean the big stompy monsters. Because this book also has kaiju. They call them titans and leviathans, but they are giant monsters who come in from the sea and just destroy everything they come across until the legions are able to take them down. Now, the society has built up these walls. They have 3 ring walls as well as a sea wall to try to protect the society against these titans as they come up from the ocean. Now, this has a very strong Attack on Titan vibe, as many of these Leviathan are just barely topping out at the wall. And every year they get a little bit taller, and it makes it easier for them to attack. So where I'm at in the book is I just finished chapter 21, which is almost exactly halfway through this book. So at the point that I've made it to, we actually haven't gotten to see a Leviathan in person yet. Though I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. In fact, I'd kind of expect it to happen by the end of this book. Now, as these Leviathan essentially come in, they essentially just wreak havoc across everything. In fact, as Cole is moving through Leviathan lands, he actually sees past dead Leviathans. Initially, he thought it was just a big hill and then as they got closer, he's like, well, that's weird. What are those whitish tree things poking up? And it's the rib cage of this titan just rising up, taller than many buildings. In fact, they can even feel the titans through tremors as they're coming closer and closer to land. So earthquakes kind of precede the Leviathan attacks. So if you really kind of were wondering, how would I describe this book, maybe using a property maybe you're familiar with? So I'll start off with describing this using the television show 24. It takes place, and all the main characters are essentially law enforcement of it, and they're investigating what appears to be a terrorist attack. Someone has intentionally brought down part of the wall to let a Leviathan in. And there's almost no one that can be trusted. Anyone from the investigation team, from the people who are supposed to be protecting the citizens, anyone could be involved. So there's this definite mistrust that permeates this story because you don't really know who's telling the truth. I mean, you can kind of expect the two kind of lead characters, Cole and Anna, to be straightforward, but it becomes very clear early on they both even have their own secrets. They may not be the bad guys, but they are definitely not innocents either. In fact, Anna has a whole mysterious backstory of how she has been exiled out to the hinterlands, out where the Titans attack. And Cole, he became augmented seemingly to help his family. But Cole, after he was augmented, they tested him to see which of the bureaucracy would he be assigned to join. And they did that through a series of tests that happens before the book takes place. And seemingly, he colossally failed every one of those tests. Except when it came to the test to join this, Inquisition. Because and suddenly he just aces it. and he's the perfect candidate for this new investigator who's coming out to his region. Now, that kind of smells of like he intentionally like failed all those other tests because he wanted this job. And we don't know why he wanted this job. It's very curious. Like I said, it doesn't make him the bad guy, but it does make his backstory get more and more interesting as you learn more about him. And like, for example, he almost has a dyslexia type effect. Now, it's not really clear if this is just him, or it's at least impacted by his augmentation, but he struggles to read. The letters move around on him, they change forms, and it makes it very difficult for him to read. And so, but he has to hide that, because if an investigator can't read, that's kind of a problem. So there's a lot of just these moving parts of these characters. And then once you get the secondary investigation team, and none of them can wholeheartedly be trusted by Cole and Anna as they're trying to figure out what are the bad guys up to. And even as you learn about the bad guys, it might be that they're solidly justified in at least their anger towards the Empire. Doesn't justify what they're doing, but at least you can understand why. And that's a great trait in any villain of any story, is if you can get the audience to at least understand why they're willing to go to these lengths. The audience may not agree with what they're doing, but at least they'll understand why they're behaving this way. And that's just good storytelling. So there is a lot of elements to this story. And like I said, I kind of joked that, is there going to be some time-traveling romance plot? I mean, I'm joking about that, but I'm also wouldn't be terribly surprised, because this is just shoving everything into one book. And so far, it's working. It is a delicious stew, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the second half of this book has. So if all that sounds interesting, make sure you come back next week. Lana will also be here, and the two of us will discuss the book as a whole, and try to figure out like what really is the special sauce of this book. Because so far, it is an everything bagel. So if all that sounds good, make sure you hit subscribe, like the video, maybe leave a comment. All of that would be really helpful to us. And we also have a Discord community, links down below. In fact, there's actually been quite a bit of conversation about even other books, kind of the viewers have been recommending to each other. And it's actually been kind of interesting, because I think we're going to have to actually bring some of those in, because they sound great. So make sure you do all the things, and I look forward to seeing you next time.